Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's that time again. Sunday night history chat, live right here. Sunday night, January 21st, 2024. Thank you so much for joining me. Probably adding something a little new this evening. We should be going live on Facebook and on YouTube at the same time. I'm sure somebody will in this. In our group, our technical group here, we'll check that out and see if we really are going live on YouTube. Started a channel a little while ago. It's called Hardy on History. Please go check that out. If you're joining us on YouTube for the first time, let me give you a little brief background. I started Sunday Night History Chat 6.5 years ago, and we have talked about a wide variety of topics and books and just all kinds of things. And we continue to grow this idea. By the way, my name is Michael C. Hardy, and this is my library. We are hanging out right here at my house. And I look forward to your thoughts and discussions and conversations as we go along. Let me say good evening to everybody, our normal group of friends, Niels and Sean and Jason and Bobby Joe Goodson out in Arkansas, and Adam and Robert. Hope everybody is doing really well. Hope it is okay where you are. It's been a little cold here in Western North Carolina for the past week or more, and that's just winter. It's January. So we look forward to some warmer temps. Supposed to be a little warmer this week here on my side of the mountain. And maybe we can get out and do some stuff and just chat and meet with folks and go from there. And who knows, continue to have this conversation about history and about things. We're going to jump into tonight. And many of y'all have seen the promo. My lead in did Robert E. Lee read Edgar Allan Poe? Some of y'all probably know this, and some of y'all probably don't know this, but January 19th is both the birthday of Robert E. Lee and Edgar Allan Poe. Lee, of course, was born in 1807 in Westmoreland County, Virginia. He grew up, attended school there in Alexandria, just across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C. Attended a couple of different schools there in Alexandria before entering West Point in 1825. Edgar Allan Poe was born in 1809, 2 years later, and he was born in Boston, Massachusetts. His father abandoned his family in 1810, and then his mom died a year later, and Poe went to live with the Allen family in Richmond, Virginia. He attended local schools, and then he attended the University of Virginia, and he dropped out, and then he joined the U.S. Army, and then he found a substitute and quit the Army, and then he got an appointment to West Point and was admitted in 1830, but was dismissed for disobedience, which, of course, if you know about the life of Robert E. Lee, that is in stark contrast to Lee. Lee, the whole no demerit thing. Lee was focused and a good student, and just went through that phase of life, that whole duty, honor, country thing. Poe didn't really have that. Poe wanted to be a writer, and eventually did become a writer. He emerged as a fiction writer in 1830. He published works in various literary magazines and newspapers. His first book was published in 1832, and he wrote numerous things. It was a literary critic and everything for the next 20 plus years. On October 3rd, 1849, Poe was found in Baltimore in a semi-conscious state. He was taken to Washington Medical College, where he died on October 7th. His actual cause of death is a mystery and will remain a mystery. There's the whole idea of alcohol poisoning and a few other things, but his actual cause of death is is a mystery. While at school, early on, Lee, of course, pursued a common classical education. He read Homer, he read Cicero, he read other of the classics. One source says, he even read recommendation that letter that he had. He read all, even the minor classics. So he had that classical education. His time at West Point would have been full of military texts, but he probably dabbled in a few books as well. We have Robert E. Lee's library. We'll probably have a library card, but we have some of the stuff that he read because you had to check out a book, and we have those records. We know that between January 26th and May 24th in 1828, he checked out 52 books from the library. That sounds like my library, at least early on in life. He had books. He read books on seamanship. He read the works of Alexander Hamilton. He read Rousseau's Confessions. Just a ton of stuff that he checked out. And of course, we know that Lee later returned as a superintendent of West Point, and he went back to checking out books. His biographer, Douglas Southall Freeman, wrote in those years that Lee checked out 6 books on geography, 1 on forestry, 8 on architecture, 5 on military law, 2 on non-military biography, 1 on French and Spanish grammar, and 15 on military biography, history, and the science of war. 7 of the latter were dealing with Napoleon. And I think that's really important when we look at Lee's later life, the books that he read on the French general. Of course, the war starts in 1861, and Lee on campaign, of course, is constantly reading, but he is reading letters and reports and enemy newspapers. He undoubtedly kept reading the Book of Common Prayer. There's a great quote of Lee having a tattered copy around with him all the time, along with another book. Lee did mention once in a letter home that he was sending his wife Mary a copy of Winfield Scott's biography, although it's not really clear that Lee had read it. Maybe he had just thumbed through certain pages or things, but other details about what he read what he read for leisure during the war are not exactly clear. In 1865, Mrs. Thomas J. Jackson, and today is, of course, the 200th anniversary of the birth of Thomas J. Jackson. But Mrs. Jackson sent Lee Dabney's manuscript copy of Dabney's life and campaigns of Lieutenant General Thomas J. Jackson. This is probably, it's hard to say that this is the only book that Lee read regarding the war that he commented on. It's hard to give absolutes like that, giving the amount of information that we don't have. But Lee did make comments on this. And one of those comments, he said that I am misrepresented. Let me start over. Quote, I am misrepresented at the Battle of Chancellorsville and proposing an attack in front. The first evening of our arrival, on the contrary, I decided against it and stated to General Jackson, we must attack on our left as soon as practicable. And the necessary movement of troops began immediately. In consequence of a report received about that time from General Fitz Lee, describing the position of the Federal Army and the roads which he held with his cavalry leading to its rear, General Jackson, after some inquiry concerning the roads to the Furnace, undertook to throw his command entirely in Hooker's rear, which he accomplished with equal skill and boldness. So Lee there is trying to give some correction to Dabney's work. on Thomas J. Jackson. Now, Douglas Househall Freeman writes that Lee really didn't have enough time to adequately go over the manuscript before it was published. That's just one of those things that he had. Reading Lee's post-war, or regarding Lee's post-war readings on the war, Dr. A.T. Bledsoe wrote a letter to Lee in 1867 asking for Lee's opinion on an article that had appeared in the Southern Review on Chancellorsville. Lee replied that he had not read the article or any other books, quote, published on either side since the termination of hostilities. Once again, this is Lee speaking. I have as yet felt no desire to revive my recollections of those events and have been satisfied with the knowledge I possess of what transpired. So Lee, at that point, the first couple of years after the war, is not at all interested in revisiting that time period. He's spent several months trying to figure out what to do with his life, trying to figure out if he's going to be arrested and tried. And of course, that never happens. And then Lee becomes president of Washington College, which is in utter ruins, and he has to rebuild the school after that point in time. In the post-war years, Philip Stanhope sent Lee a new translation of Homer's Iliad. Robert E. Lee Jr. writes, quote, that winter, my father was accustomed to read aloud in the long evenings to my mother and sister. Lee is sitting there, by an oil lamp, more than likely. Not sure when they got gas lamps in Lexington, but reading Homer's Iliad to his wife and his daughters. A couple of years later, Professor George Long sent Lee a second edition of one of Lee's favorites, Thoughts of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Of course, Lee did start to collect material for his own history of the war, one that he never finished. And we may say, wouldn't it be great to have a copy of, like, Jefferson Davis's book on the war, or U.S. Grant's book on the war, Memoirs of the War? If you've ever read Lee's revisions to his Life of Light Horse Harry Lee, that's some pretty dry reading. So I don't know, while Lee had a lot of fantastic qualities, I'm not so sure of him as a literary person per se, and that could be totally wrong. Just my opinion. Now, somebody has already mentioned the Bible. Concerning the Bible, great example. One was sent to him by an admirer in 1867, and Lee sent a reply thanking him for the gift and adding that the Bible was, quote, a book which supplies the place of all others and one that cannot be replaced by any other. Lee probably carried a Bible with him. We know that he carried a Book of Common Prayer with him throughout the war, and so some of those important things. And people would send him books all the time. Probably the most important piece regarding this original question, did Lee ever read the works of Edgar Allan Poe? Poe's kind of a big literary name. Even in his lifetime, he caused a lot of literary problems, but he's kind of a big literary person. I think the best answer comes from a letter that Lee wrote his daughter Mildred in December of 1866. Lee writes, quote, I hope you will find time to read and improve your mind. Read history, works of truth, not novels and romances. Get correct views of life and learn to see the world in its true light. Now, I can't say that Lee never read Edgar Allan Poe. We know that, Lee moved around quite a bit in his early life, working on various engineering projects along the east coast of the United States and the Mississippi River. But I would probably hazard a guess based upon Lee's 1866 letter to his daughter Mildred and say he probably never read Edgar Allan Poe. Just my 2 cents worth for what it's worth. Probably not much more than that. Hope everybody's doing well. Those folks that have checked in, it's so good to see everybody this evening. David Pope raises an interesting question. There was a book called Rawls' Views of the Constitution, and according to Douglas Southall Freeman, it was used in a constitutional class for about a year at West Point, a class that Lee did not take. And that book does not appear on the records of books that were checked out from the library. And of course, we know that Lee's views on secession are different than what Rawls were. Very interesting thing. David, if he read the book, he would have had to check it out because it was, to my understanding, closed stacks. You could not walk in and pull a book off the shelf. You had to walk in and request a book, and the librarians would go get that book for you. That's what I have read. Just reading your comments right now. There's our friend William Jordan from down in Eastern North Carolina. Hope things are well. And our friend Gary from Australia. And John from the burbs of Detroit. Jason just got in a copy of Henderson's biography on Stonewall Jackson last week. I was over there. I'll be talking about Stonewall Jackson tomorrow night on SCB Chat. And I was over there looking at, I have about a whole shelf full of Jackson biographies. And I discovered that I have a later edition of Henderson's 2 volumes combined into one, but there is actually a first printing of volume 1 of Henderson's Life of Jackson. Not sure where I came up with that one, but when you got about 3,000 books, I don't always remember exactly where they came from. But David, yes, to my understanding, you couldn't just go pull books off of the shelf. It was closed stacks. The librarian or whoever was working in the library would go and retrieve the book for you. Did Jackson ever read Edgar Allan Poe? I can't say that he didn't, but it is unlikely. I don't know. What do you think? Can you see Jackson sitting there reading the Rue Morgue or Tales? Elizabeth, my company over here, is sitting there shaking her head no.
General Lane, yes. General Jackson,
no. Well, Elizabeth says General Lane, yes. She can see James H. Lane and Pickett and maybe
wouldn't get it, but he would enjoy it.
Maybe some of the others, but not so much Robert E. Lee. Someone asked earlier, Josh asked about Pale Blue Eye regarding Edgar Allan Poe. I actually enjoyed that. We watched that a couple years ago, last year. We watched that and thought that was really good story. Of course, it's a movie and it's fiction, and we should never take our understanding of history from a movie. But it's always fun to step into that and see somebody else's interpretation. Poe, of course, comes from a much more troubled life than Robert E. Lee. Of course, Lee's father dies early on in his life and leaves his family in, I won't say a destitute condition, but not like it was earlier in life. But I enjoyed Josh. I enjoyed Pale Blue Eye.
Mhm.
Just that was a pretty good library or pretty good movie. Um, So that's what's going on here. We have, I will be on the road, providing that the weather is good this week. I will be going live on SCV Chat tomorrow evening to talk about Stonewall Jackson, 200th anniversary of his birth today. I will be speaking in Kingsport on Tuesday night and Asheville on Thursday night. So if you're interested, I'll be posting more information about those times and dates here soon on my Facebook page. And I encourage you to check that out and come on out and join the conversation. I enjoy having enjoy folks asking questions. I don't know all the answers, but I'll give it a stab and maybe come up with something. Um, Maybe agree with you and maybe challenge what you believe, and we'll probably all learn something in the process because we're all on that path of learning things. So I have a picture to share this evening concerning that on the books. I have looked for years and have very much wanted to find a list of books that Robert E. Lee owned. What was in his library? What was in the library there at Arlington that did not survive at Arlington after the war? This is a post-war image of Robert E. Lee's library or his office there at Washington College. Which is now Washington and Lee University. I don't think this is accessible um, to the general public anymore. I've not been to Lee Chapel in since 2020, 2019, probably 2019, 2018, somewhere in there. I'm not really sure the last time that I visited. But look at that row of books right there. Um, I'd like to know what those books were. And maybe I should try and reach out to the archives there. It would be great to find a list and know more about the books that he owned and see more of the things. I heard someone say one time, I should have looked this quote up before we started, but you can tell about the character of a person by the books that he reads. Not quite sure who said that. Maybe I said that, and I just
Various people in different ways.
various people in different ways have said that, and so I would love to know. We may also say that the books make a person, and I would love to know what kind of books made him. Of course, we've talked about the classical books and some of those other things, but yep. Robert E. Lee's office. You can see those books up there. Of course, this would have been a picture after he had passed away. The fantastic basket sitting below the desk was his wastebasket. That's what he threw stuff away in. So fantastic idea. John, you're right. Stonewall Jackson, Thomas J. Jackson, did come from a fairly troubled life. His father died early, and living there in what's now West Virginia, and just also had a troubled life as well. Well, William Jordan, there are a lot of books we own that we will never read. I'm bad about buying books. I already have enough books to keep me busy for a lifetime, but they still continue to arrive here in the Michael C. Hardy Memorial Library. Jason Baker says that he thinks that Washington and Lee has a list of the books Lee had there. I would love to see that. I can't seem to find that online anyplace. And preparing for this for the past couple of days, it's not the first time that I've looked. I have looked several times over the years, trying to find a list of books. Both books that Lee owned later in life, and maybe books that were at Arlington prior to the war. Not that Lee was home all that often to read those books, but it'd be interesting to know. Jason wants to know coffee or water in the mug, lemonade this evening. So our friend Brian Duckworth, I believe, has been volunteering at the Washington and Lee at Stonewall Jackson House, and I'd be interested in a list of books that Jackson had or read. Of course, the Bible, the Book of Common Prayer, would have been right up there on the top of that list. But what is Jackson reading? That would be another fascinating question. And we could move that to, Beauregard or Albert Sidney Johnston or Joe Johnston or Jefferson Davis or Abraham Lincoln. What did these people read? Just one of those fascinating conversations to have. It is hard, a challenge sometimes to, too many people these days write from a 21st century perspective. The 21st century, especially the past decade, has tainted their vision of history. It's more important to go through and to read the things that these important historical figures, political and military, read. So we have some idea about how their thought processes were formed. And we can't do that until, we've read the Iliad and the Odyssey and, some of these other classics and things until we have that type of understanding. How can we understand the U.S. Constitution until we've dived just a little bit into the English Constitution? So we'll go from there. John, I have done research in the archives at Washington and Lee one time for a project I still don't have finished. It's a project on Robert E. Lee, and any time writing on Lee is kind of a daunting experience. But if it keeps snowing the way it is and has for the past week and a half, and being this cold, then who knows? Maybe I'll get back to that project sooner than later. Our friend TJ's been watching the John Adams series. That was a fantastic series that came out. I don't know when it came out, but it's been a while. That scene of Adams and Franklin and Jefferson and all of the others sitting there, and that roll call is taking place on whether or not to adopt the Declaration of Independence. That's one of my favorite scenes. It really is. Fascinating thing. Just fascinating. So, folks, we'll hang out here for a few minutes. And if you have any other questions, please drop them in the chat box. And I will do my best to give you some type of answer.
It's a Poe question.
And if it's an Edgar Allan Poe question, we can get our literary analysis expert to come over here and maybe give you an answer to that Edgar Allan Poe question. If you ever get a chance and you're in Richmond, Virginia, please go visit the Edgar Allan Poe Museum there. We have been once a very long time ago. 27 years ago. We were young and crazy and poor. Now we're old, crazy, and poor. But we actually day tripped to Petersburg and Richmond for Elizabeth's birthday. We left Boone, North Carolina, and drove up there and spent the day going to historic sites. And the Poe Museum was one of them. And then turned around that evening and came back. We were young. We could do things like that. But they have a fantastic diorama of the city of Richmond prior to the 1860s. That was the thing. I don't really remember anything else about the Poe Museum in Richmond, but that was the thing that stuck in my mind was that fantastic diorama of the city of Richmond that they had. So maybe we need to put that on our list to go back at some point in the future. I don't have any plans to go to Richmond in the near future, but who knows what email will pop in my inbox and we will be on the road someplace exciting. Just checking messages here. Hope everybody is doing well. I know it's cold where a lot of y'all are. It was around 0 at my house last night, 2 or 3 above, with a wind chill well into the negative numbers. Jason writes that Edgar Allan Poe was stationed at Fortress Monroe down on the peninsula east of Richmond during his time in the Army. And he wanted out of the service, and he did get out of the service, and then, of course, was appointed to West Point. We actually have a book over there someplace, do we not, on Edgar Allan Poe in Richmond? We have a book on Edgar Allan Poe in Richmond, but it's in Elizabeth's office at the college. In Petersburg. So I will not be able to share that book with you this evening. That's okay. Elizabeth's only been in her office once this past week. So maybe the next week will be a little better. All right, folks, if you got any other questions, please drop a comment. I will say that if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube later on, and you have a question, it would probably be better to contact me at michaelchardy.com. There's a contact form on that page. And I don't always check comments later on at a later date. It's kind of busy around here at the Hardy household with all of these writing projects and things going on. So if you've got something you want to talk about further, please go to Michael C. Hardy, and I will do my best to get you an answer. Tony wants to know, Elizabeth, jump up and grab us that Walt Whitman book about Walt Whitman and the war. And Elizabeth actually teaches that in her class. To your left. Oh, I don't have. Sorry, I don't have a book. I was thinking about a book I have on Herman Melville and the war.
Drum Taps is Whitman's collection of war poetry.
Yep, Drum Taps is Whitman's collection of war poetry. So check that out. I am quite certain that there's a book on Walt Whitman and the war, but I don't think I have that one. I was thinking of the book I have on Herman Melville and the war. Yes, David Pope, I still have copies of at michaelchardy.com. I can get you a signed copy out. In fact, I have a copy of General Lee's Immortals, My History of the Branch Lane Brigade, and a copy of my book on the Battle of Hanover Courthouse that really need to go in the mail on Monday. I got this order on Friday, and of course the weather's been bad, and we've not been out. So maybe tomorrow I will get out of here. Getting out of here is not the problem. Getting back up is a challenge sometime. Brian Blankenship writes that he thought Poe lived in Maryland. Poe actually did live in Maryland for a while. He was found ill in Maryland, and he is buried in Baltimore. Yes, he did live in Baltimore for quite a time. In fact, if you are pulling for a football team, the reason why the Baltimore Ravens are called that is because Edgar Allan Poe. Elizabeth and I had this conversation earlier. Are the Ravens the only professional football team that has a literary name? We couldn't think of another one. Entirely possible that they do, but that's the only one we could think of. So the Baltimore Ravens are called the Ravens because of Edgar Allan Poe. Our friend Brian Duckworth wants to know, did Poe serve time in the military in Charleston? I don't remember that. Elizabeth says yes, he did. I don't remember that.
What's the name of that island? Sullivan's Island.
Sullivan's Island?
Isn't that near? No, that's where's this? He was on Sullivan's Island.
So maybe we'll have to look that up later.
His military experience is pretty strange.
All right, folks, any other comments, please drop them and we will give them a stab before we bury them under the floor.
Or a tomahawk. That was Poe's nickname, Tomahawk Man, because he wrote the meanest criticisms of other people.
Elizabeth said that Poe's nickname was the Tomahawk Man because of the sharpness of his literary criticism. So
this is a concrete floor. You can't bury anything.
All right, folks. I do believe that's going to do it for this episode of Sunday Night History Chat. Billy Bubba Williams, good to see you this evening, says that Poe was stationed at Fort Moultrie, which is across Charleston Harbor from Fort Sumter. No other comments. We're going to sign off for this evening and probably go get a book and do some reading. Who knows? Y'all have a fantastic evening. Thank you so much for joining us on Sunday Night History Chat. Lord willing, we will be back next Sunday night. We have some guests that have been working on lining up in the near future. And we're going to be talking about a lot of different aspects of history, as we often do here on Sunday Night History Chat. If you are interested in a copy of the information that I have on Robert E. Lee and Edgar Allan Poe, should be posted on the blog Looking for the Confederate War tomorrow. Thank y'all so much for joining me this evening. Please stay safe out there. Stay warm. Keep researching history, digging, sharing that information, and God bless.